Thanks, Akhil. Okay, all right. So this is regarding the customized returns module that we had developed on Odoo 16. So recently with the Bamni standard 1.0 release, we have integrated Odoo 16 and few implementations have started already using the Odoo 16 flows. So from one of the implementation, there was a requirement to simplify the returns flow. So usually in an ERP system, return would have two steps. One would be when a customer or a patient, in our case, it would be a patient. When a patient returns a drug or a consumable, anything, that should be updated back in the stock. So which is on the stocking side. Then we would have one on the inventory side, on the invoicing side, wherein the customer needs to get a refund or a credit note has to be created for the customer. So by default on the Odoo, this takes multiple steps. So let me share my screen. Yeah, so for example, let's take this patient, wherein a patient named John Doe. So this patient has got some sale orders before, and now after some time, the patient comes for a return, wherein the patient wants to return few medications that the patient has already bought. Like there could be multiple reasons why the patient is returning. Maybe the patient is an IPD patient at the time of discharge, there is some return happening, or maybe the patient has some chronic illness and has purchased the drugs for 30 days, but now the doctor wants to change the medication on a follow-up visit. So different scenarios can happen. So the default flow in Odoo would be, the first step would be we need to reverse the stock process. So for that, we open the sale order and we go into the delivery and then we need to create a return entry. So for example, this is the sale that has happened. So 24 quantity has been sold for RP sold 5 mg. Now let's say the patient brings back 10 quantity. So I need to put 10 over here and then do the return. So once we do this and once we enter the quantity, like say we are receiving back the 10 quantities, and if I do confirm and validate, the stocks get reversed into the system. But now the credit invoice needs to be created. So for that, again, we need to go back to the sale order, go into the invoices page, click on add credit note. Then we need to select, like, what is the reason and what is the reverse invoice. Then a reverse invoice would be created for this customer. So this takes multiple steps. So for a pharmacist to handle all the steps would be difficult. So in order to ease this process, there is now a custom module which is developed. So when I go into apps and search for return, so we have this Bumni customer sales return. So on installing this app, now it brings a new menu under the sales section itself. We have something called as customer return over here. So basically we go here, click on new and select the customer. So here, let's take this patient as an example and we can select the return location. So based on your setup, implementation setup, there can be different locations where the stock dispense and return process is happening. So you can configure the default to be loaded. That is a configuration. And now the pharmacist or the person whoever is taking the return will start entering the products. So let me enter the same product. So RP sold 5 mg. So now once we enter this, it will fetch in whatever sales that has happened. So for example, for this customer, this specific product, there is a sale that has happened and it shows all the sale information, unit price, from which batch the sale has happened. Now let's say if the pharmacist by mistake selects a different product where there is a no sale for this customer, then it would throw an error saying that there is no sale order in the last 30 days. So there is also a configuration wherein you want to take in returns for a specific number of days. So based on your implementation setup, there can be, okay, I want to take returns if the sale has happened in the last 30 days, last 50 days. So it's up to you to configure this timeline. So now once this is done, I can do a return quantity. So now let's say I want to return 5. So once I enter the return quantity and click on confirm, this module now will take care of automating both the processes. So now once this return is confirmed, now if I go to invoicing and if I go to credit note, we can see that a credit note is created. So RP Preserve 5 unit, there is a credit note created with the invoice total. Now if I move to inventory and if I go to the returns, we can see there is one return entry created for this customer saying that RP Preserve 5 units is dispensed. So now this comes back into the stock and the credit note is also added. So now once we have the credit note, it's up to the facility to choose what to do with the credit note. Either you can register a refund for this customer and disperse the cash, or you can adjust it in an upcoming bill. So that's up to the implementation to configure it. Yeah. So there are configurations possible. So one configuration is under settings. If we go, we have this Boundary configuration wherein Here the maximum days limit for the customer return. So here it is configured as 30. Now based on the implementation's requirement, it can be configured to 45, 50, whatever the number of days is needed. Yeah, and for the default return location, I can also be configured. So we go into inventory, configuration, operation type, and in the returns, we will have the default destination location. So right now I have set it to pharmacy. So depending on the need, like where the frequency the returns happen, the return location can be configured over here. Yeah, so this is how the initial version of this module right now looks like. And also one thing to note is that if you still, okay, maybe we have separate teams doing this. There is a separate team which does the credit and credit note entry, and there is a separate team which does the stock entry process. Then you can still follow the Odoo's default flow. So this is added as an optional flow, wherein based on the implementation's requirement, if you want, you can use this return module. Yeah. So I'll stop here. Any thoughts, feedbacks?
This is useful feature, Mohan. Sure. For a smaller hospital setup,
Right.
it's quite useful.
Right. And
Is it
stop here.
available as an app that we can pick up in the?
Yes, Sandeep, this is available as a module. So it's available
Okay.
in our Bomni Odoo modules itself, which you can pick up.
Okay. Thank you.
That's wonderful. Thanks for the demo. I'll now stop recording so that we have